Aren't you tired of living the same day over and over again? And aren't you tired of allowing your sort of perception of yourself to get in the way of the actions that you know you have to take to improve your life? We can either let this anger and frustration that has been building up in our life for a long time, we can either let that make us bitter and resentful, or we can take a step back into awareness and face the brutal truth of what is required from us in a way that is not so emotionally impulsive. And how do we do that? How do we not let inaction be more of a frustrator than life itself? And this is what I mean by that. Are you truly frustrated and angry with the results of life, with the cause and effects of your relationship with life? Or are you more frustrated and angry with your inaction when given the proper opportunities in life? And you have to be brutally honest, because if we're not sort of being brutally honest with ourselves, if we're lying to ourselves, then we can't authentically open ourselves to reality when those given opportunities are pushed forward. You can't even walk into the door of the room that you're looking for if you're not willing to be honest with yourself and what you see in the mirror. So again, more than anything else, is it possible that you are frustrated with your inaction, and you are frustrated because the opportunities that have been presented to you have been shut down, not by your choice, but simply because fear got in the way and you couldn't find your way to maneuver around that fear? And here's kind of the key, I think, in that regard, and that is, we can't maneuver around fear. There's no way around it. There's no way sort of up and over it or under it. There's no way to go any way through fear except right through its metaphorical chest. The only way to become the person that you want is not to perceive fear as something that is holding you back, but to perceive fear as a sort of guardian to the life that you want. And the discomfort that is required of you in going through that fear is the initiation to what you actually want in your life. This is a framework that has helped me and is actually beginning to, I guess, open my mind to the possibilities of what reality could be. It could be even better than we ever imagined. That's because reality itself is not limiting you, but rather your perception and your relationship with fear is limiting you. Your self-awareness to identify with traits that you know aren't meant to be owned is holding you back. So instead of looking at fear, and instead of saying, how the hell am I going to get through this large emotional body? How the hell am I going to work through this? It's so fear inducing. It causes me to lose my sense of balance. It causes me to not see clearly. And the whole point is, you're not supposed to be balanced. You're not supposed to see clearly when you're induced with fear. You're just supposed to move through it. You're just supposed to move forward and keep one foot going after the other. It's not a game with fear. There's no tricky way around. There's no sort of cheat code. It's walking straight through it and feeling all of the discomfort that's associated with it. So even as you walk that path through fear, you're shaking, you're nervous, you're sweating, you feel like turning around, your body's aching, no matter what it is. You're still walking through because you're understanding all of that discomfort. That is the initiation into entering the sort of life that you want and becoming the person that you always wanted to be. And this can take a really, really long time to figure out, because not only is fear a bully, but it's unrelenting in its ability to simply hold its ground. If you'll notice, fear doesn't necessarily change all that much. It may pop up in new places that you would have probably never expected. It may change its form, but the feeling is the same. So when you conquer fear in one aspect of your life, you make other aspects of your life easier as well, because you're dealing with the same energy. It's not that fear is completely changing itself and changing its form, but rather it's the same fear popping up in all these different angles of your life. And in all those angles, the more you allow it to have a sort of dictatorship over the way you make choices, the way you make decisions, the more you're going to repeat the same sort of cycles and loops. That's what happens. We move in circles. again and again and again. And the more we move, the more we kind of go about not changing things, not changing our actions, we reap the same cause and effect cycle that we always have. And then anger builds up and resentment. And what people will do is they'll misplace this anger and resentment on things out of their control instead of being brutally honest with themselves. So they may blame the world. They may blame people. They may blame even a past version of themselves when all it really takes is brutal, honest accountability and a sort of one-to-one with your own shadow self. And what I mean now by shadow self is that your inability to be honest with yourself is creating the shadow. The shadow of everything you don't want to be will only come about as a result of you not being honest about who you do want to be. So when you act satisfied by unsatisfactory environments, you aren't accepting less, even. What you're doing is being inauthentic to your true self. And what happens is when we come into a new state of being, right? So we're overcoming that fear, we're moving through fear because we're seeing it as the guardian to that sort of gate of the reality and the life and the person we want to be. We're moving through it. And what happens is as we enter this new state of being, we must be sure not to cower away from the sort of radical confidence and optimism that will come about. Because if we're not used to being confident, if we're not used to stepping into a room confidently, if we're not used to, you know, feeling empowered, if we're not used to standing in our light, what's going to happen is we're going to be so, I guess you can say, afraid, and not afraid as in the normal fear, but rather we are afraid of being humbled by life as a result of conquering our inner difficulties. But we must see that there is no force outside of us that is looking to embarrass us, that is looking to humble us. If anything, life in all of its forms supports an evolution to a more abundant and satisfactory state always. Why wouldn't it? If what this process is if facing fear, if getting the life that you want, becoming the person that you want, makes living life easier, it doesn't make life easier. It makes your perception of living life easier because you did more difficult things. If it makes it all easier, then why wouldn't there be a natural support system even built into life? Because that will help with the evolution of all life. No matter what you want to say is the point of life, if you look at it from a evolutionary standpoint, why would that not be supported? What do you and the people around you gain from you being miserable, from you being in a state of inaction? Pretty much nothing. But when you are in a state of making the choices that you want, doing difficult things, conquering, and kind of being this best version of yourself in this sort of flow state, then many things around you can benefit. And many of the sort of tangents of life are allowed to evolve in a way that otherwise wouldn't really be possible. And there's a stone cold sort of awareness that exists within that guardian that is made of fear to the things that we want. And it's because it is unmoving. It doesn't move. It doesn't get easier the more you think about it. It doesn't get easier the more you analyze the many ways that you could face the fear. It doesn't get easier. It really is like ripping the band-aid off. And I know no one wants to hear that. I didn't want to hear that. No one wants to hear that because it's too brutally honest. It sounds too easy. And what that advice does, what the quote unquote ripping the band-aid advice off does, is it places utter and complete responsibility onto us for our own life. And if we aren't prepared to accept accountability, if we aren't prepared to do whatever it takes to be the person that we want, to accomplish the life that we actually want, then that's what develops the shadow self. And that's what starts to develop a sense of self-pity and resentment and anger towards our very own self. And we're supposed to be our, greatest support system. But you can even understand why your mind and why even you, as a conscious force, might turn against yourself when you're still giving in to the inability to move through fear. You can't blame yourself for starting to hold these sort of emotional, I guess, ties, negative emotional ties towards you, belief systems towards you, when every time an opportunity presents itself, you continually let yourself down. And I'm not saying that in a way to push you down even further. I'm saying that as in all of the advices that people like to give, all of the guiding principles, all of, this is going to be the secret trick, this is going to be the key, most of it just doesn't, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you aren't willing to rip the band-aid off and actually face fear and move through discomfort, no matter what that discomfort feels like, then nothing is actually going to change. You're going to change far more in your mind, and you might, have waves of happiness, and you might have waves of sadness, and you might even, find a decent amount of emotional regulation in absorbing information and plotting on using it. But until you actually do the thing that you're scared of, move through fear, nothing is going to radically change. And you can test this for yourself. And that's why, when I make this argument, I don't need to do any convincing, because you can try it for yourself. Do the thing you're scared of, and you'll see immediate results. Immediately. There's many things that take time, When we talk about neuroplasticity, when we talk about reprogramming our minds, that takes time. Healing takes time. Overcoming trauma takes time. All of these healing techniques take time. But facing your fear and taking the action that you've been scared of doing because you want something that's on the other side of that fear, that's going to yield immediate rewards. Whether it's going to feed you your own self-confidence that you were able to do it, or you're going to reap the reward of the actual action itself. No matter what it is, you are going to benefit very, very greatly from the experience. I think an important thing that it comes down to is, and this is the sort of, I guess, dark side of the spectrum of truth when it comes to this particular area of experience, and that is, if you don't grow angry enough, if you don't grow frustrated and resentful enough at your own inability to act outside of the counterproductive loops you've been engaging in, nothing's going to change. And people will say anger is no way to make change in your life. And I agree, but I'm not necessarily speaking about anger being the fuel to change, but rather you're wanting to not feel that anger any longer. And you're wanting to not feel that anger needs, ironically, needs you to be angry enough at the sort of inaction that you've been experiencing for so long, the repetitive cycles, that it forces you to be someone else. Anger, if there's anything to it, resentment and anything, if there's anything to this, it can be a force moving us towards the feeling of change. Because once we're at the sort of starting point of change, once we're going through the change, we abandon all of those emotions. Once we're going through the fear, the anger disappears. Have you noticed that? That when we move through that fear, when we actually finally are doing the things we're scared of, the anger is gone. The resentment is gone. It's because the two are directly tied. Being unsatisfied with our lives, it's not that we're unsatisfied with reality. It's not that we want to point blame at life or other people. It's that we want to be that version of ourselves right now. And we keep on looking for excuses for why we can't be that person. And we know deep in our hearts, you know deep in your heart, the brutal, honest truth is you don't really have to wait any longer. There's plenty of opportunities that come about. And it is our own fear, it is our own anxiety that stands in the way of us seizing those opportunities. The more you think about it, the more you ponder it, the stickier it gets. That's because the mind and the thoughts are not going to help you out of fear. I'll tell you that for free right now. No thought, no mental gymnastics are going to give you the bravery needed to move through fear. And your mind likes to convince you it can, because it's trying to deal with emotions with logic. But emotions oftentimes aren't logical. The sort of polarity to fear is bravery. It's not even everything you need to be just yet. It's not even the confidence that you need. It's just the bravery to try. Because let's say you try that thing that you're scared of 10 times. Let's say there's something that you're trying to do, whatever it may be. We can use a very simple, silly example of hitting a baseball. You're scared of getting hit by the ball. And What you're lacking to do is step up to the plate. But once you step up to the plate, and once that ball is already flying, that anger disappears. Now you're in fear. But at least you've escaped that counterproductive loop. You've escaped the cycle. Moving through fear, just put yourself in it. Just throw yourself into fear and figure it out there. Trust me, you will figure it out. You 100% will figure it out. Just throw yourself in. There's nothing to actually be scared of because the experience of fear is all that there is. The outcome is unknown. The outcome won't yield the same amount of fear that you're sort of obsessing over so much. Just throw yourself in the fear and watch all the anger, watch all the resentment and frustration disappear. Because you're throwing yourself in the fire and you will make something of yourself when in that moment. Because you'll be forced to figure it out. And that's the only way to actually move through that guardian that's guarding the gates. I know I just said guard like 3 times, but you guys get the picture. There's no amount of secret tricks that are going to solve every, fear that we have. It's the same energy popping up in all areas of our life. And by tackling it head on in one way, you open yourself up to a bunch of different areas of your life that can be improved. Fear doesn't change its form. Sorry, I misspoke. Fear does change its form, but it doesn't change its energy. It's the same energy. It's the same guarding force that's keeping us trapped. And it doesn't move. You have to move through it. It will present itself because the opportunities of what you want will present themselves. Maybe you have to put yourself out there. Maybe you have to leave your comfort zone. Maybe you have to do something that you normally wouldn't do. It's about stepping out of that sort of old character, that old conditioning. It's stepping out of the entire paradigm and lesson of fear in exchange for something much greater. And oftentimes it doesn't happen until we're genuinely sick and tired of the same old shit happening over and over and over. And that's why I started this video with, aren't you tired of living the same day over and over? Because what happens? At first we get angry, right? We get angry, we get disappointed in ourselves, get disappointed in life, in whatever direction that sort of thing is moving. And then as a result of that anger, we are forced to zoom out and we say, what really matters? Why do I feel like this? What is the point in feeling like this? And we're left with 2 options, right? We can either sulk in our anger. We could basically give in to any negative habit that results of that anger, or we can use it to widen our scope and see what is truly worth it. What do we want out of life? Life is too short. Tomorrow is not promised. So in living the same day over and over, we lose sight of tomorrow because tomorrow dresses up in the same costume today did. We have to break the loop. We have to do something we've never done to live a life that we don't yet have. And no video, no book is going to reveal anything more than remind you of the very brutally honest truth that you have to be brave. That's it for today's video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you as always. And my book will be coming out on Tuesday. So I hope you guys are excited for that. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.